The stars shone coldly across the vastness of space, indifferent to the suffering below. For over 300 years, the Milky Way had lived under the harsh rule of the Dran Empire. These tall, crystal-like beings moved with precision and cold logic, their translucent bodies glinting with internal light as they walked through the halls of power throughout the galaxy. "Stand aside," a Dran commander ordered, pushing past a group of Plurixian diplomats who had come to plead for more food for their starving world. The crystal being didn't even look at them. To the Dran, organic life was simply a resource to be managed, harvested, and used up. In the grand chamber of the Galactic Assembly, representatives from 1,000 worlds sat in silence as the Dran officials announced new resource quotas. Once, this assembly had been the proud center of cooperation between species. Now, it was nothing more than a gathering of tax collectors for their crystal overlords. "Your planet must provide 30%. More biomatter this cycle," the Dran leader announced to the Falarian representative, whose fur stood on end with fear. "Failure will result in cleansing operations." Everyone knew what that meant. 3 worlds had been cleansed in the past decade alone when they failed to meet quotas. Billions of lives erased without a second thought. At the edge of this troubled galaxy, Earth remained blissfully unaware of the danger. Humans had just mastered faster-than-light travel and sent out their first exploratory vessels with hearts full of hope and dreams of friendly aliens. The UES Pathfinder dropped out of hyperspace near the Plurixian system. Captain Han stood on the bridge, his face illuminated by the glow of distant stars. "Sensors detecting massive energy signatures," reported Officer Bay, her eyes widening. "Sir, there's some kind of harvest operation happening on the 3rd planet." The crew watched in horror through their view screens as massive Dran ships systematically extracted resources from the planet below, leaving barren wastelands behind. Orbital platforms processed organic matter into energy storage crystals, with living beings herded like cattle. "They haven't detected us yet," whispered Han, his knuckles white as he gripped the command rail. "Turn off all non-essential systems. We're getting out of here now." The Pathfinder slipped away unnoticed, carrying with it knowledge of humanity's potential future. When they returned to Earth, their report sent shockwaves through the United Earth government. In a secure underground facility beneath the Pacific Ocean, Admiral Kim pounded his fist on the table. The Defense Council jumped at the sound. "We have. Maybe 5 years before they find us," he said, his voice steady despite the fear in his eyes. We can't fight them conventionally. Their technology is centuries beyond ours." "So what do we do?" asked General Park, the oldest member of the Council. "Surrender without a fight?" Admiral Kim's expression hardened. "No, we build something they've never seen before. Something that breaks all their rules." He activated a holographic display showing a ship design unlike anything humanity had ever constructed. Sleek, asymmetrical, with systems that seemed to defy conventional engineering. "This is the UES Defiance," Kim explained. "It will incorporate every experimental technology we've been too cautious to implement. Quantum shielding, gravity manipulation, consciousness-linked targeting systems." "This is madness," whispered Dr. Yoon, head of the Science Division. "Half these systems exist only in theory." "Then we'll make theory into reality," Kim replied firmly. "We have no choice." Construction began in secret, deep within the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. Mining operations that appeared routine from the outside were actually gathering materials for humanity's greatest project. The best minds from every field were quietly reassigned, their families told they were working on deep space communications. Technology. Workers lived in hastily constructed habitats, working 20-hour shifts to build humanity's last hope. Children born in these space colonies didn't know they were part of a desperate race against time. They played in low-gravity chambers, while their parents assembled pieces of a warship designed to challenge an empire. "We intercepted another transmission," reported Intelligence Officer Song during a late-night briefing 6 months into construction. "The Dran have established a new outpost just 12 light-years from our solar system." Admiral Kim nodded grimly. "How long until they find us?" "At their current pattern of expansion? 3 years, maybe less." The timeline tightened. Sleep became a luxury no one could afford. Technological breakthroughs happened weekly as necessity drove innovation beyond what anyone thought possible. 2. Years into the project, a test of the Defiance's propulsion system lit up the asteroid belt with strange energy that bent light around it. For 3 terrifying days, everyone feared they'd been discovered, but the Dran never came. "The drive works," announced Chief Engineer Joe, exhaustion and triumph battling in his voice. "It actually works. We can move faster than their sensors. Can track." Admiral Kim allowed himself a small smile. For the first time since learning about the Dran, he felt something other than dread. It wasn't quite hope yet, but it was close. As the Defiance took shape in its massive construction dock, humanity prepared in other ways too. Military training incorporated strategies that seemed random and illogical, exactly what might confuse the pattern-dependent crystal minds of the Dran. The day the Defiance was completed, a small Dran scout ship entered the outer edges of the solar system. Humanity's time had run out. Admiral Kim stood on the bridge of the completed warship, looking at the faces of his crew, men and women who had worked impossible hours, sacrificed everything to bring this moment into reality. "Prepare for launch," he ordered quietly. "It's time to show the galaxy that humanity will not be harvested." As the mighty ship slipped from its asteroid hiding place, the future of Earth, and perhaps the entire Milky Way, hung in the balance. From the endless black of space, the Sol system looked unremarkable. Just another yellow star with a handful of planets circling it, one of which happened to support carbon-based life. To the few alien scouts that occasionally passed by, Earth appeared to be a backwater world still fumbling with basic space travel. Their scans showed primitive orbital stations, clumsy chemical rockets, and no signs of advanced technology. This was exactly what Captain Lee wanted them to see. Deep within the asteroid belt, hidden by specialized jamming fields and the natural cover of spinning space rocks, the real work continued day and night. The massive shipyard that housed the UES Defiance buzzed with activity, with shuttlecraft moving constantly between supply depots and the main construction area. "Status report," Captain Lee called out as he entered the command center. His voice was rough from lack of sleep, but his eyes remained sharp and focused. The holographic display in the center of the room showed the Defiance in its current state, now 85% complete and already unlike anything humans had built before. "Sir, we've successfully integrated the adaptive shield matrix," reported Officer Kang, brushing her short hair back from her face. Dark circles under her eyes matched those of everyone else in the room. "Early tests show it can absorb and analyze energy weapons, then reconfigure to resist repeated attacks." Captain Lee nodded. "The Dran rely heavily on crystalline-based energy weapons. They've never needed to evolve beyond them because no one's ever survived the first encounter. The shield technology had seemed impossible just 3 years ago. Now it was real, capable of learning from each hit it took, analyzing the weapon's frequency and adjusting its resistance accordingly. In theory, it could become completely immune to any weapon if given enough time to adapt." "And the gravity pulse system?" Lee asked, turning to Chief Engineer Choi. The older man grinned despite his exhaustion. "It works, sir. We can create localized gravity wells that can trap enemy ships or tear them apart. Nothing like it exists anywhere in the galaxy as far as we know." This was the pattern of the Defiance project, impossibilities made real through human determination. While the rest of Earth's population went about their lives unaware of the true threat looming beyond their solar system, 5,000 of humanity's brightest minds worked in secret to save them all. In his private quarters that night, Captain Lee reviewed the crew selection files. The ship itself was revolutionary, but Lee knew that technology alone wouldn't save them. The Dran thought in patterns, their crystalline minds processing information with perfect logic but little imagination. Their strategies had remained unchanged. For centuries, because they'd never needed to adapt, the crew of the Defiance would be their secret weapon. "Computer, filter candidates by creative problem-solving scores," Lee instructed. The files rearranged themselves, highlighting individuals who had demonstrated exceptional ability to think outside conventional solutions. Lee had handpicked each of the 100 crew members, looking not just for technical skills, but for the uniquely human traits the Dran couldn't understand. intuition, creative thinking, and the ability to make logical leaps. Officer Jin appeared at his door, knocking softly. "Sir, we've received another transmission from Admiral Kim. The Dran scout ship is moving closer to Mars." Lee's jaw tightened. "How long?" "At their current speed, they'll be in range to detect our energy signatures in 3 days. 3 days. It would have to be enough." The final 72 hours passed in a blur of activity. Sleep was forgotten as everyone worked to complete the systems that would give humanity its one chance at survival. On the last day, the crew selected for the mission gathered in the Defiance's main hangar bay. 100 humans stood at attention as Captain Lee addressed them. They came from every corner of Earth, different cultures, backgrounds, and specialties, but they shared a common purpose now. "What we're about to attempt has never been done," Lee told them, his voice echoing in the cavernous space. "No species has ever successfully challenged the Dran Empire, but no species has ever been quite like us." He pointed to the ship behind him, a sleek, asymmetrical vessel with a dark hull that seemed to drink in the light around it. The Defiance isn't just a ship, it's humanity's statement to the galaxy. "We will not be harvested, we will not be slaves, and we will show the stars what humans are capable of when our backs are against the wall." A cheer rose from the assembled crew, echoing off the metal walls. That night, as the Dran scout ship crossed the orbit of Mars, the UES Defiance powered up its systems for the first time. Its experimental engines hummed to life, bending space around the vessel in ways that defied conventional physics. The ship didn't just move through space, it slipped between the fabric of reality itself, invisible to standard detection methods. On the bridge, Captain Lee settled into the command chair, surrounded by his carefully chosen crew. Officer Kang at tactical, her mind quick enough to implement battle strategies on the fly. Engineer Choi at the engine controls, his intimate knowledge of the ship's experimental systems making him irreplaceable. Communications specialist Park, whose understanding of alien languages might prove vital. And weapons officer Jun, whose unorthodox approaches to combat had initially confused his instructors until they realized his brilliance. "All systems online," reported Officer Kang, "adaptive shields at full capacity." "Gravity weapons charged and ready," added Jun. Lee looked at the main view screen, which showed the approaching Dran scout ship, a crystalline structure that glinted coldly in the light of Seoul. The aliens had no idea what awaited them. "Begin approach pattern," Lee ordered. "Let's show them something they've never seen before." The Defiance moved silently through the asteroid belt, its revolutionary drive leaving no energy trail to follow. Its hull absorbed scanner waves rather than reflecting them. To the Dran, it would appear as nothing more than a shadow, until it was too late. As they closed in on the alien vessel, Captain Lee felt the weight of humanity's future on his shoulders. Everything they had worked for came down to this moment. "Remember, your training," he told his crew. "They think in patterns, we don't, that's our advantage." The Dran ship continued its approach toward Earth, unaware that humanity's response was already bearing down on them. A response forged through ingenuity, determination, and the uniquely human ability to achieve the impossible when survival depends on it. The Dran scout ship emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system, its crystalline structure catching the distant sunlight and sending rainbow reflections across its surface. 2 more ships followed, forming a standard Dran scouting triangle. Their sensors immediately began cataloging the system, identifying the 3rd planet as the primary source of organic life. "Primitive civilization detected," the Dran commander noted in their clicking, crystalline language. "Minimal space presence. No defensive capabilities of significance." The lead ship transmitted images back to the Dran Central Command, crude satellites orbiting Earth, a small space station, and what appeared to be early-stage colony efforts on the planet's moon. Nothing that would concern the empire that had conquered 1,000 more advanced worlds. "Begin standard harvesting announcement," ordered the commander. The Dran ships accelerated toward Earth, their engines leaving trails of blue-white energy. As they approached Mars, they detected a single vessel in high orbit around the red planet. The Dran sensors categorized it as a primitive defensive ship, barely worth noting in their reports. Commander Park stood on the bridge of the Defiance, watching the Dran ships approach on the main view screen. His heart pounded in his chest, but his voice remained calm as he addressed the crew. "They've spotted us, everyone remember. We've trained for this moment. They expect us to follow patterns they understand. We won't." The communications officer looked up from her station. "Sir, they're broadcasting on all frequencies. Standard translation matrix is working." "Put it through," Park ordered. A harsh, artificial voice filled the bridge. "Attention, organic species of the third planet. This system is now under the protection and resource management of the Dran Empire. Your cooperation will ensure minimal population reduction during harvest cycles. Resistance will result in immediate cleansing. Acknowledge and prepare for assessment. Team arrival." The message repeated 3 times, then silence. It was the same ultimatum the Dran had delivered to countless worlds. They expected immediate surrender. They always received it. "No response, sir?" asked the communications officer. Commander Park shook his head slowly. "Not yet, let them wonder." He turned to his tactical officer. "Weapon status?" "Gravity weapons charged. Adaptive shields at full power." Park nodded. "Engagement pattern Theta 9. The crew looked at each other with slight smiles. Theta 9 was one of their more unpredictable attack patterns, a series of maneuvers that would appear completely random to the pattern-seeking minds of the Dran. "Sir, they're scanning us more intensively," reported the sensor officer. "They appear confused by our hull composition." "Good," Park replied. "Let's confuse them even more. Execute Theta 9 on my mark." The 3 Dran ships moved into attack formation as they approached the lone Earth vessel. Their weapons, crystalline arrays that channeled energy through precisely aligned structures, began to glow with gathering power. "The organic vessel remains unresponsive," reported the Dran weapons officer. "Preparing cleansing burst." "Standard elimination pattern," the Dran commander ordered. "Begin tracking solution." On board the Defiance, Commander Park gripped the arms of his command chair. "Mark, what happened next would become legend throughout the galaxy. The Defiance simply vanished. The revolutionary drive engaged, slipping the ship partially out of normal space-time. To the Dran sensors, the target disappeared completely. "Tracking lost," the Dran officer reported, confusion evident even in their crystalline voice. "Target has—" The Defiance reappeared directly behind the lead Dran ship, so close that the crystal beings could see the dark hull through their viewing ports. Before they could react, the human vessel fired its gravity weapons. There was no beam, no explosion, no traditional weapon discharge. Instead, space itself warped around the Dran ship. The crystalline structure of the vessel, so perfect in its alignment, began to distort as localized gravity pulled in multiple conflicting directions. "Weapon impact unknown," the Dran commander said frantically. "Systems failing. Crystalline matrix integrity compromised." The Defiance vanished again, reappearing above the second Dran ship. Another gravity pulse, and the alien vessel's propulsion crystals shattered, leaving it drifting helplessly. "Counterattack pattern 7, ordered the Dran commander. "All ships focus fire when the target reappears." But the Defiance didn't follow any pattern the Dran could predict. It appeared in locations that defied tactical logic, each time firing its gravity weapons with precision. Not to destroy, but to disable. On the bridge of the human vessel, Commander Park watched with grim satisfaction. "Status report?" "All 3 Dran ships disabled, sir," replied his tactical officer. "Their weapons are offline, engines disabled." "No significant casualties detected on their vessels," Park nodded. "Open a channel." When the communication system activated, Park stood from his chair and faced the view screen. His next words would be transmitted to the Dran ships and, through their distress signals, to the broader Dran Empire. "This is Commander Park of the United Earth Ship Defiance. Your forces have been neutralized without a single casualty. This was a choice, not a limitation. We could have destroyed you entirely." He paused, letting that sink in. "Earth is not your harvest field. Humanity is not your resource. We've studied your empire for years, learning your weaknesses, while you remained ignorant of our existence. What you experienced today was a single ship. There are more. This last part was a bluff. The Defiance was one of a kind, but the Dran had no way of knowing that. You will leave this system immediately. You will report to your leaders exactly what happened here, and you will carry this warning. Any further aggression against Earth or its people will be met with destruction rather than mercy." As Park finished speaking, the Defiance fired its engines once more, circling the disabled Dran fleet in an impossibly tight maneuver that their sensors struggled to track. "Restore minimal power to their engines," Park ordered his crew. "Just enough for them to limp home." "Sir," asked his second-in-command quietly, "do you think they'll heed the warning?" Park's expression hardened. "No. This was just the scout force. They'll be back with their main fleet, but now they're afraid, and they've never experienced fear before." As the crippled Dran ships slowly retreated from the Sol system, news of their defeat spread rapidly through subspace communications. Throughout the galaxy, oppressed species who had lived under Dran domination for generations received the news with disbelief, then growing hope. On distant planets, resistance leaders whispered about the human ship that had done the impossible. In secret meetings and hidden bunkers, they spoke a new word: defiance. And in the darkness between stars, the Dran Empire prepared for war. The great Dran Armada filled the view screens of Earth's orbital defense platforms. Hundreds of crystalline ships, their surfaces catching sunlight and breaking it into rainbow patterns that might have been beautiful under different circumstances. They had returned, as Commander Park had predicted, with enough firepower to reduce Earth's surface to ash. But the UES Defiance was nowhere to be found. The Dran High Commander's voice echoed through Earth's communication systems. "Surrender the vessel that attacked our scout ships. Submit to immediate resource assessment. You have one planetary rotation to comply." In the hidden command bunker beneath the Pacific Ocean, Admiral Kim watched the transmission with a grim expression. Beside him stood Earth's political leaders, their faces pale with fear. "Where is the Defiance?" the United Earth President whispered. "Why aren't they here?" Admiral Kim allowed himself a small smile. "Exactly where they need to be." 12 light-years away, the Defiance dropped out of its space-warping drive near the planet Corvus. Once a thriving world of avian-like beings, it had been under Dran control for over a century. Its population now worked in massive harvesting facilities, extracting their own planet's resources for their crystal overlords. Lieutenant Choi stood on the bridge beside Commander Park as they approached the planet using stealth systems. "Scans confirm heavy Dran presence," Choi reported. 3 orbital platforms and a small defense fleet." Park nodded. "Any sign they've detected us?" "None, sir. Our approach is clean." The commander studied the tactical display. "Identify the main resistance cell locations." This had been Choi's special project for months before they left Earth, using long-range communications to identify and contact underground resistance movements on Dran-controlled worlds. On Corvus, they had established tentative contact with a group calling themselves the Free Wings. "Signal detected, sir," Choi said after a moment. "Very weak, but it matches the frequency we arranged. They're waiting at the coordinates." Park turned to his crew. "Prepare the drop team. Remember, we're not here to fight their battles. We're here to show them how to fight their own." The shuttle departed the Defiance under cover of darkness, using the same space-bending technology to avoid Dran sensors. It landed in a remote mountain region where the jagged peaks interfered with Imperial scanning systems. Lieutenant Choi led the team of 5 humans into the cold night air of an alien world. They carried with them equipment packs containing something more valuable than weapons: knowledge. From the shadows of twisted, blue-leafed trees, figures emerged cautiously. The Corvisians stood nearly 7 feet tall, with feathered crests and arms that ended in 4-fingered hands. Their leader stepped forward, eyes fixed warily on the humans. "You are the Defiers?" he asked in halting galactic standard. "The ones who broke the crystal ships?" Choi nodded. "We are from Earth. We've come to help you break more than ships." The resistance camp was hidden deep within a network of mountain caves. As the humans were led inside, they saw hundreds of Corvisians living in cramped conditions, with makeshift medical facilities treating injuries from Imperial labor camps. "The Dran increased harvesting quotas after your attack, the resistance," leader explained. "They fear something is coming. They push us harder, take more." Choi's expression hardened. They're right to be afraid. Show me your weapons. The Corvisians reluctantly displayed their meager arsenal, mostly mining tools converted to crude weapons and a few stolen Dran energy pistols, nothing that could challenge Imperial control. These won't be enough, Choi said, but this will. Help? He opened one of the equipment packs and removed a small device. When activated, it projected a holographic display of Dran physiology and ship schematics. The Dran aren't invincible, Choi explained, pointing to specific sections of the crystal being structure. Their bodies and technology share the same fundamental weakness. Their crystalline matrix can be disrupted by specific frequency vibrations. He demonstrated by activating another device that emitted a high-pitched sound. This frequency causes microfractures in their structure. With enough exposure, it can disable or even shatter them. The Corvisians gathered around, eyes wide with hope for the first time in generations. You could have used this to destroy them all, the resistance leader said quietly. Why give it to us instead? Choi smiled. Because this isn't just about defeating the Dran. It's about every species learning to stand up for themselves. We'll help you build these disruptors and plan your first strike against the local garrison. Over the next 3 days, the humans worked alongside the Corvisians, teaching them how to construct sonic disruptors from local materials and mining equipment. They shared battle tactics developed on Earth specifically to counter Dran strategies. On the 4th day, a small team of resistance fighters led by 2 humans attacked a Dran processing facility. The sonic weapons worked exactly as promised. The crystal guards literally cracked under the assault, their perfect structures compromised by the carefully calibrated sound waves. News of the successful attack spread across the planet like wildfire. Meanwhile, the Defiance had already moved on to the Peloran system, where Lieutenant Choi met with aquatic resistance leaders in underwater caves. The pattern repeated, sharing technology, demonstrating Dran weaknesses, planning targeted strikes against Imperial infrastructure. We've been fighting for generations, an elderly Peloran told Choi after a successful raid on a Dran communications hub. But we never knew how to hurt them before. The Defiance jumped from world to world, always staying one step ahead of Dran pursuit vessels. At each location, Lieutenant Choi established secure communication protocols between resistance groups, creating an interstellar network of allies who could share information and coordinate attacks. On Veros Prime, they taught the silicon-based natives how to reprogram Dran control systems. On Calyx, they showed the insectoid population how to use their natural tunneling abilities to undermine Dran structures. Each species contributed unique knowledge to the growing resistance network. Backseas. On Earth, Admiral Kim received encoded updates from the Defiance. As the Dran Armada held position around Earth, seemingly content to wait out the humans, a map in Kim's command center tracked the spreading rebellion. 30 worlds and counting, each marked with a small light that represented hope. They still don't understand what's happening, Kim told his officers during a briefing. The Dran think this is about military strength, about who has the bigger fleet or the stronger weapons. They don't understand that we're fighting a different kind of war. On the bridge of the Defiance, Commander Park received an incoming transmission from a newly liberated mining outpost. "Commander," the alien leader said, his translucent skin quivering with emotion, "we have control of the facility. The Dran have retreated. What are your orders?" Park shook his head. "No orders. This is your victory, not ours. You decide what to do next." This was perhaps the most revolutionary aspect of the human approach. They refused to replace one empire with another. Each liberated world was encouraged to establish its own government and make its own choices. Lieutenant Choi entered the bridge with a data pad. "Sir, we've confirmed contact with resistance cells on 32 worlds now. The communication network is stable," Park nodded. "And the special project? Ready for implementation. The combined fleet could be assembled within 2 standard weeks." For the first time in months, Park allowed himself to smile. "Then it's time for the next phase. Set course for the rendezvous point. We're going to show the Dran something they've never seen before, a galaxy that isn't afraid anymore." As the Defiance jumped into its space-warping drive, The ship's crew felt a growing sense of purpose. They weren't just a single vessel fighting against impossible odds anymore. They were the spark that had ignited a flame across the galaxy, a flame of resistance that was rapidly becoming an inferno. And at the heart of that flame was a simple message that resonated with every oppressed species. You can fight back. You can win. The massive view screen on the Defiance's bridge displayed a sight no organic species had witnessed in over 3,000 years, the Dran homeworld, Crystallis Prime. Its surface gleamed like a colossal diamond, cities and structures, growing naturally from the crystalline terrain in perfect geometric patterns. Beautiful, yet cold and unyielding, much like the Dran themselves. Captain Lee stood at the center of the bridge, her weathered face illuminated by the planet's reflected light. Around her, the crew worked with quiet intensity, each person aware of the historical significance of this moment. Behind the Defiance waited ships from 27 formerly conquered species, a ragtag alliance united by a single human vessel's impossible victories against the Dran Empire. "It's amazing," Lieutenant Wu said softly from the science station, breaking the reverent silence. "The entire planet is one interconnected crystalline structure. Their cities aren't built, they're grown. And it took them exactly 10,000 years to achieve that perfect symmetry," added Lieutenant Commander Patel from Tactical, according to the data we recovered from their outpost on Proxima III. Captain Lee nodded. "The Dran value precision and pattern above all else. 3,000 years of conquest, bringing other species to heal through their superior technology and absolute predictive capabilities." She turned to face her crew. "And that's exactly why we're going to win today." First Officer Rivera approached, with a data tablet. "The Allied fleet is in position, Captain, though I should note that several commanders have expressed concerns about our strategy." "Of course they have," Lee replied with a hint of a smile. "It's completely irrational." Around the bridge, several crew members chuckled nervously. The plan was indeed unlike anything conventional military doctrine would suggest. It violated every principle of strategic engagement. "Communications from the Dran hegemony," called out Communications Officer Chen. "They're requesting our surrender." "Again, put it on screen," Lee ordered. The image of Crystallis Prime was replaced by a Dran High Commander. Like all their species, its body was a humanoid framework of living crystal, faceted and gleaming with internal light. Its voice resonated with mathematical precision when it spoke. "Human vessel Defiance, your rebellion against the natural order has been permitted to continue long enough. Our analysis of your tactical capabilities indicates you have a 0.0037% probability of success in this engagement. Surrender now and your species will be granted specialized status within the hegemony." Captain Lee stepped forward. "High Commander, we've received the same offer at every encounter, yet here we are, at the heart of your empire. Perhaps your probability calculations need revision." The Dran's crystalline features shifted slightly, the closest they came to showing emotion. "Your previous victories were statistical anomalies. They cannot be replicated. We have studied your tactics extensively." "I'm sure you have," Lee replied, "and therein lies your fundamental misunderstanding of humanity." Defiance out. The screen returned to the view of Crystallis Prime, now showing Dran defense platforms activating around the planet. Hundreds of crystalline ships moved into formation, their arrangements mathematically perfect. "They're deploying exactly as predicted," Rivera noted, checking the tactical display. "Their battle formations haven't changed in 800 years. Lee moved to the command chair but remained standing. "The Dran conquered half the galaxy because their crystalline computing minds can process and predict conventional battle tactics with perfect accuracy. Every species that fought them used logical, ordered approaches to warfare." She looked around at her crew. "We won't be doing that." She pressed the ship-wide communication button. "All hands, this is the captain. Initiate Operation Chaos." Throughout the Defiance, crew members activated systems that had been specially modified for this engagement. The ship's power signature began fluctuating wildly, its shields pulsing in random patterns. "Signal the Allied fleet," Lee ordered. "Begin the approach. Complete communications blackout except for the Chaos channel." The human ship surged forward, and behind it, the Allied fleet followed. But instead of moving in conventional formation, each ship began following seemingly random trajectories, accelerating and decelerating without pattern, firing weapons at apparently arbitrary intervals. On the Dran command ship, the High Commander's crystalline form vibrated with confusion as its tactical systems attempted to process the approaching fleet's movements. "Their attack pattern is, or there is no pattern," a subordinate reported, its voice frequencies unstable. "We cannot predict their movements." "Impossible," the High Commander insisted. "All warfare follows logical progressions. Analyze deeper." But there was nothing to analyze. Captain Lee had discovered the Dran's greatest weakness during their previous encounters. Their crystalline minds literally could not process true randomness. They required patterns and order to function. Their entire civilization was built on mathematical precision, and humanity had brought chaos to their doorstep. Back on the Defiance, tactical screens showed the first wave of Dran ships attempting to intercept them. Their weapons fired in perfect, predictable sequences, exactly where logical enemies would be. But the Allied ships weren't there. "Hard to port, full burn for 3 seconds, then cut engines completely," Lee ordered. The Defiance lurched sideways, then drifted silently, confounding Dran targeting systems calibrated for logical evasive maneuvers. "All weapons fire at random targets," she continued. "Don't aim for command ships or engines, hit anything. Use the chaos targeting protocol." The Defiance's weapons officers executed commands generated by a system that incorporated genuine randomness, leveraging quantum fluctuations and even old Earth methods like dice rolls and coin flips to determine targeting. On the tactical display, the results were immediate and stunning. Dran ships, accustomed to enemies that targeted vital systems in logical sequences, found themselves hit in unpredictable locations by weapons fired at unpredictable times. "Their shields are adapting too slowly," Patel reported with growing excitement. "They're trying to establish patterns to our attacks, but there aren't any." Throughout the Allied fleet, other species followed humanity's lead. Embracing unpredictability, the Vulcran ships, known for their rigid formation flying, now spun and tumbled like leaves in a hurricane. The methodical Tauri abandoned their careful targeting protocols and fired blindly at multiple targets simultaneously. "The Dran fleet is falling into disorder," Rivera announced. "Their formations are breaking down as they try to respond." Lee nodded grimly. "They can't help themselves. Pattern is fundamental to their nature. When faced with true randomness, they attempt to identify patterns that don't exist. It's overwhelming their tactical systems." On the main view screen, the perfect formations of the Dran fleet had dissolved into confusion. Ships collided as they tried to establish new patterns. Others fired at empty space, predicting movements that never materialized. "We've opened a path to their central defense hub," Patel called out, "sending coordinates to the fleet now." Captain Lee straightened her uniform. "This is it. All ships converge on the central hub. Maintain chaos protocols. Do not fall into patterns, no matter what." The Allied fleet surged forward, still moving in their unpredictable ways. The Defiance led the charge, its engines flaring in irregular bursts, its weapons firing in random sequences. The Dran Central Defense Hub loomed ahead, a massive crystalline structure that controlled the automated defense systems around the planet. Taking it out would leave Crystallis Prime vulnerable. "They're concentrating their forces to protect the hub," Rivera warned. "Almost 200 ships." "As expected," Lee replied calmly. "Signal the Vulcran and Tauri ships to execute Chaos Maneuver Theta." No one had rehearsed Chaos Maneuver Theta because it wasn't a real tactic, just a prompt for each ship to do something completely unexpected. The result was spectacular. The Vulcran ships suddenly accelerated to maximum velocity, spinning wildly. The Tauri vessels cut engines and drifted, firing all weapons simultaneously in a sphere around themselves. The Dran defenders, attempting to predict and counter these movements, found themselves shooting at where logical enemies should be, not where these chaotic attackers actually were. "Hub defenses weakening," Patel reported. "Their shield harmonics are destabilizing." "As they try to adapt to our random frequencies," Captain Lee took a deep breath. Prepare the converter cannon. The Defiance's main weapon had been specially modified for this battle. Based on technology from 3 different species, it was designed to do one thing: transform the Dran's greatest strength into a weakness. Converter charged and ready, Patel confirmed. Target the hub's central crystal matrix and fire. The Defiance shuddered as the converter cannon released a pulse of energy unlike anything seen before in the galaxy. When it struck the hub's crystal matrix, it didn't destroy it, it changed it. The perfect crystalline structure began to vibrate at random frequencies, its internal pathways distorting. "Direct hit," Patel exclaimed. "The matrix is destabilizing." On the view screen, the massive hub began to pulse with chaotic light. The perfect geometry that had existed for millennia started breaking down, replaced by random crystalline growths. "The randomness is spreading through their network," Wu reported from the science station. "It's affecting all connected Dran systems." Throughout the Dran fleet, ships began powering down as the chaotic vibrations spread through their crystalline technology. On the planet below, the perfect geometric cities flickered as randomness infected their structures. "They're surrendering," Chen said incredulously from communications. "The High Command is broadcasting a system-wide stand-down order." A hush fell over the Defiance's bridge. After 3,000 years of ruthless conquest, after countless species subjugated and exploited, the Dran hegemony was facing defeat. Captain Lee stood silently for a moment, absorbing the magnitude of what they had accomplished. Then she turned to her crew. "Inform the Allied fleet to cease fire but maintain defensive postures, and open a channel to the Dran High Command." The face of the High Commander appeared once more on screen, its crystalline features now flickering with unstable light. "Your unpredictability is beyond our capacity to process," it said, its perfectly modulated voice now wavering. "The hegemony acknowledges defeat. What terms do you demand?" This was the moment Lee had prepared for, perhaps more important than the battle itself. She stepped forward, standing tall. "The Allied species do not seek your destruction or subjugation. We propose the formation of a galactic concordat, a council where all intelligent species, including the Dran, will have equal voice and equal rights." The High Commander's facets shifted in apparent confusion. "You do not wish to replace us as the dominant power." "Dominance is a flawed concept," Lee replied. "Humanity's history taught us that empires rise and fall, but cooperation endures. We believe diversity, even chaos, strengthens us all. The Concordat will ensure that knowledge flows freely between all worlds, that resources are shared equitably, and that no species can ever again subjugate another." As the terms were relayed, messages flooded in from the Allied fleet and from worlds across the galaxy that had been monitoring the battle. Many expressed shock at humanity's proposal. They had expected Earth to simply replace the Dran as the new galactic power. 3 days later, in the Great Crystal Hall on Crystallis, Prime, representatives from all formerly conquered species gathered alongside Dran leaders to sign the founding document of the Galactic Concordat. Captain Lee, as humanity's representative, was the first to place her signature on the crystalline tablet. "Today marks the end of conquest and the beginning of cooperation," she announced to the assembled delegates. "Each of our species has unique strengths and perspectives. Together, we will achieve more than any empire could dream possible." In the years that followed, the Defiance became more than just a ship. It became a symbol. Its image was carved into monuments on dozens of worlds, representing the day when defiance of tyranny became legend. And humanity, the species that could have claimed galactic dominance but chose equality instead, became known by a simple phrase whispered with reverence across the stars. "They taught us to be free." The Defiance itself was eventually placed in a special orbit around a newborn star, visible from 100 worlds, a permanent reminder that sometimes the greatest strength comes not from order and predictability, but from the beautiful chaos of freedom.